Hello, students. This is Mr. Mormon. Welcome to Lesson 5 in the Nature of Science. Today we're going to be learning about critical thinking. Here's a good quote from Josh Lanyon, book Come Onto These Yellow Sands. If there was one life skill everyone on the planet needed, it was the ability to think with critical objectivity. That really sums up what we're going to be learning today. As always in these lessons, I'd like you to copy the notes, copy the things which I write down. So let's start with comparing and contrasting. And this is when you examine two objects for similarities and differences. One way to show this kind of critical thinking is with a Venn diagram. In the middle of a Venn diagram is where you compare. You talk about how the two things are the same, and on the outside is where you contrast. You talk about the differences between the two objects. Here's a quick little activity to kind of bring the point home. Here we're going to compare and contrast the two animals in the photo. First, we would list all the similarities that you see. They both have their mouths open. They both have fur. They both have ears and eyes. They're looking at us. They both have paws with nails. All the different characteristics that make them both dogs. But we could also talk about the differences. One is long hair. One is short hair. One has long, droopy ears. The other has ears that are slightly cropped or sticking up. That's comparing and contrasting. Here's another critical thinking quote before we move on to the next, which is applying concepts. The essence of the independent mind lies not in what it thinks, but in how it thinks. So another area where we think critically, or another way to think critically, is by applying concepts. This is when you use your knowledge about one situation to make sense of a similar situation. The flipped classroom is a perfect example of this, where we learn the information for homework through the videos, but then we apply what we've learned the next day in the classroom with the activities and the labs and the demonstrations, etc. It's a perfect example of applying concepts. It's also how we learn. When we're faced with new information, new learning, the way that we remember it and learn it is we need to apply it. We need to attach it. We need to combine it with what we already know, and build on what we already know, and figure out how the new information fits in. And it makes things much easier to remember if you can connect it to something that you already know. Okay, let's do a quick activity for this one. So you've just learned that water takes longer to freeze when other substances are mixed into it. Use this knowledge to explain why people need a substance called antifreeze in their car's radiator in the winter. Again, applying something that you've learned to a new idea. Of course, the antifreeze needs to be added, otherwise the water in the radiator would freeze when it got to temperatures below 0 degrees Celsius. Okay, time for another quote. Critical thinking is thinking about your thinking while you're thinking in order to make your thinking better. I like this one. I like the idea of thinking about your thinking. Okay, so the next concept to write in your notes is interpreting illustration. When interpreting illustrations, it's important to take the time to study all of the details in the entire illustration. Focus on those details. You know, Figure out why did they add that illustration, to that page in the book. Why is it important? It's also very important to read any written information that accompanies the illustration, like captions, labels, keys. They're going to really help you figure out what the illustration is all about. Okay, let's look at a few examples of interpreting illustrations. Here's an illustration, the internal anatomy of an earthworm. I read the caption first. Internal anatomy. We're looking at the things inside the worm. Now it says write a short paragraph, but we're not going to do that now, but that's something we could do. After studying this for a while, I start to realize that there are structures both inside and outside the earthworm identified here. I see bristles on the outside. I can see that there's all different systems on the inside, and some of them are connected. Blood vessels, heart. I see that they use different colors to represent different systems. I see digestive tract, intestines. See all different kinds of organs, and I can trace them all along the length of the worm. Okay, here's another example. This one's from the June 2014 New York State Science Assessment. In this question, it asks you to interpret a diagram, an illustration, and you have to add information to it. It says a multicellular organism cells are organized so that the organism can carry out life functions. The diagram below represents the 5 levels of organization. 2 levels are labeled, cell and organism. Complete the diagram by placing each of the labels, organ, organ system, and tissue, at the correct level. So this question is asking about levels of organization and putting things in the proper order. You're really going to be placing them from smallest to largest, and you need to interpret the diagram first to figure out the order. As you can see, the way it's designed, it's kind of like a bullseye. The smallest thing is on the inside. The next level would contain the level before it. The outer ring, of course, contains all the other levels. So to complete this correctly, after cells, would come tissues. That's a group of cells. The same kind of cells would be a tissue. After tissue would come organ. An organ is a group of the same, of different types of tissues all working together to do a job. And then organs are part of organ systems. And you put all the organ systems together, you then have the organism. All right, but you couldn't have answered that question unless you interpreted the diagram first and realized the smallest thing is on the inside, the largest category is on the outside. All right, here's another great critical thinking quote. The educated don't get that way by memorizing facts. They get that way by respecting them. Okay, the next example of critical thinking is relating cause and effect, which is cause and effect. This is a relationship where one event causes another to occur. For example, if you notice an itchy red bump on your skin, you might infer that a mosquito bit you. The mosquito bite is the cause and the bump is the effect. It's important to note that 2 events do not necessarily have to have a cause and effect relationship just because they occur together. Scientists carry out experiments or use past experience to determine whether a cause and effect relationship exists. So let's do another example. You're on a camping trip and your flashlight has stopped working. List some possible causes for the flashlight malfunction. How could you determine which cause and effect relationship has left you in the dark? So think about it. What could be the things that are wrong? The battery. The battery's dead. The battery's not connected properly. There's poor contact with the battery. A wire's broken. The bulb is burnt out. The switch is not working properly. Any one of these things could be the cause. The way you would test this, you would, pick the most likely thing, replace the battery and put in fresh batteries. Start looking at the contacts, look for corrosion. Look at the filament in the light in the bulb. See if that's good. Okay, let's look at another quote. Here's a good one from Albert Einstein. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Okay, the next critical thinking concept is making generalizations. This is when you draw a conclusion about an entire group that's based on information about only some of the group's members. For a generalization to be valid, the sample you choose must be large enough and representative of the entire group. You might, for example, put the skill to work at a farm stand if you see a sign that says, sample some grapes before you buy. If you sample a few sweet grapes, you may conclude that all the grapes are sweet and purchase a large bunch. All right, How about an activity? A team of scientists needs to determine whether the water in a large reservoir is safe to drink. How could they use the skill of making generalizations to help them? What should they do? Take a minute and think about that. How about taking many samples from all around the reservoir, all around surface level, and maybe some at depth, mid-level depth, the deepest part of the reservoir. Test all those samples, and if they're all safe to drink, you can make a generalization that the water in the reservoir is safe. Okay, the next concept I want to talk about in critical thinking is making judgments. This is when you evaluate something to decide whether it is good or bad. And I like this applicable quote here from Carl Sagan. It seems to me what is called for is an exquisite balance between two conflicting needs, the most skeptical scrutiny of all hypotheses that are served up to us, and at the same time a great openness to new ideas. Obviously, these two modes of thought are in some tension, but if you're able to exercise only one of these modes, whichever one it is, you're in deep trouble. If you are only skeptical, then no new ideas make it through to you. You never learn anything new. You become a crotchety old person convinced that nonsense is ruling the world. There is, of course, much data to support you. But every now and then, maybe once in 100 cases, a new idea turns out to be on the mark, valid, and wonderful. If you're too much in the habit of being skeptical about everything, you're going to miss or resent it. And either way, you will be standing in the way of understanding and progress. On the other hand, if you are open to the point of gullibility and have not an ounce of skeptical sense in you, then you cannot distinguish the useful as from the worthless ones. When making judgments, you need to think through all of the pros and cons of a situation and identify the values or standards that you hold. You need to listen carefully to your peers, hear all of the arguments, and certainly question. Find out everything you can before making your judgments. And here's the activity. Should children and teens be required to wear helmets when bicycling? Explain why you feel the way you do. All right, this is a pretty obvious one. There's certainly, I guess you can think of pros and cons to wearing a helmet. A helmet might be on the con side, not the most comfortable, not the most fashionable thing, but on the pro side, of course, unless you like the idea of wearing a diaper for the rest of your life because you've gotten a brain injury from a fall on your bicycle, or worse, you might want to wear a helmet. Okay, again, weighing pros and cons. There's certainly many more things that could be added to this argument, but I think the pros way outweigh the cons. And everyone should be wearing a helmet when doing dangerous activities that run the risk of a brain injury. Okay, and now our final category in critical thinking is problem solving. This is when you use all of your critical thinking skills to resolve an issue or decide on a course of action. Some problems, such as how to convert a fraction into a decimal, are straightforward. Other problems, such as figuring out why your computer has stopped working, are complex. Some complex problems can be solved using the trial and error method. Try out one solution first, and if that doesn't work, try another. Other useful problem-solving strategies include making models and brainstorming possible solutions with a partner. Okay, that's it for today.